ask a question or two, feel free at any time. So as I said, today is going to really the goal for today's lecture is to really target the standards and give you some background to go with it and give you a little bit of practice and interactive tasks to go with it. So first and foremost, if you haven't already done so, in the chat, I've provided 2 links. And here is even a QR code for those of you that have another device handy with you that you can download one of those links. But I'd like you to make sure that you have access to the vertical articulation. It's called the At a Glance document, vertical and horizontal articulated standards with content strands and GLOs, and then the actual New York State standards document that was released earlier this year. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure you download both or have access to both. We'll be diving into those briefly moving forward. First, so with that said, these new standards are hot off the press and approved in March, just before the precipice of the or the culmination of the pandemic. And so excited that we were able to get these standards approved on March 2nd unanimously by the Board of Regents. But before we really dive into it, it's really important to think about, and some of you know me well, but I always think about journeys, and I think about this journey, and this journey wouldn't have been possible, and this continued journey and the steps moving forward wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our visionaries, our past visionaries in physical education who certainly blazed the trail for us previously. This work is the culmination of our visionaries in 1996 who developed the health, physical education, and consumer sciences standards. And we'll talk about that in a second. But many of them are familiar faces and, again, legends that we have to certainly pay tribute to. And some here today, Miss Sandy Morley and Mr. Rick Amundsen and Colleen Corsi and many other familiar faces that you may see and names that you may recall. But if it wasn't for them, we certainly wouldn't be in the place that we are today. So kudos to all of our visionaries for your hard work. Let's see here. Now, next slide. This really talks about, speaking of our visionaries, how we came to be where we are at this point. So in 1992, in response largely to the calls or questions of public education in the late 80s, namely A Nation at Risk, our national association at the time, which was AHPERD, developed content standards, and no different than any other disciplines. Many disciplines responded with a call to action in developing content standards. And in physical education, 1992, AHPERD was no exception and followed suit with 7 national content standards. State associations and state education departments across the union also followed suit throughout following. And in 1996, New York State Education developed our 1996 Health, Physical Education, and Learning Standards that we just discussed. In 2004, our National Association, AHPERD, revised the national content standard and moving from 7 national content standards down to 6 national content standards. And at New York State Education, or New York State, still holding true at 3 standards. And then in 2013, a name change also to the National Association Shape America, and another refinement or condensing of the national standards, moving from 6 down to 5, which many of us now know and have more experience with in our PEAT programs. But remember that New York State's still holding true with their 3 New York State standards in physical education, health, and family consumer sciences. So in 2015, noticing a gap between a connection between the New York State standards and 3 iterations, if you will, of the national standards, it became increasingly apparent by many new visionaries in New York State AHPERD that there was a gap. And thanks, prompted by the efforts of Dr. Elisa James and many of her colleagues across the state, they were successful in developing the New York State AHPERD Curriculum and Assessment Guidance Document. And that particular guidance document provides curricular assessment recommendations that align and connect the New York State standards, the 96 version, to the national standards at the 2013 version. So a very helpful document that's still being used right to this day. And we'll talk about its revision coming up shortly as well. So in 2018, and probably earlier, questions began to arise at the New York State level. And you can see that 2018 is 22 years in the making. And if you look back again, you see that 3 iterations of the national standards, but yet still the same version of the New York State standards. So it became increasingly apparent, again, thanks to the efforts of our New York State AHPERD Association and New York State Ed and Mr. Darrell Daly, we were able to begin the process to discuss a revision to the New York State Physical Education Learning Standards. And that began in the beginning of the calendar year 2018, and started with some phone calls and planning meetings in that early spring, and with a kickoff meeting in August of 2018 moving forward. And that's where we were able to complete the task almost 2 years in the making. And in 2020, we were, again, just amid the precipice of the pandemic itself, we were able to present the new edition of the New York State Physical Education Learning Standards 2020 to the Board of Regents with unanimous approval. So that's the background and context to provide, and gives you some, again, just some context and perspective in terms of the journey behind us and now moving forward. So taking a look more closely at those 2 years from 2018 and onward, it became increasingly apparent, obviously, that we needed to revise the standards or create new standards. And so that's what we set out to do. We put together a committee. We'll talk about that in a second. And we set out, starting with a culmination meeting, a kickoff meeting in August of 2018. And then the job was to meet diligently throughout the next 2 years to get the job done, revision. And as a result, we met probably 3 times in each of the traditional semesters, the fall and spring, and then 1 or 2 in the summer with intermittent conference and virtual meetings to go with it, to allow us to facilitate our goal of having a draft of the standards ready for public consumption by the fall of 2019, so last year at this time. So our goal last summer was to have a draft completed to allow another level of vetting, if you will, by our by the public in the fall of 2019. So with that comes some of the key features of this project and this initiative. So first and foremost, physical literacy, the construct of physical literacy, the idea that each child should be encouraged and cultivated to pursue their individual journey to physical literacy, thinking about the 3 learning domains and allowing each child to find their own journey to physical literacy was an important theme that emerged throughout the entire process. And that really connects as well to the social emotional side and mental health initiatives that have taken precedent in New York State and what we've seen over the last several years in public education as well. The idea that we want to think about physical education as part of the well-rounded education of each child. Cultural responsive approaches and pedagogy was another prevalent theme that emerged throughout the process. And when we think about culturally responsive approaches, we often think about the students we see, the challenges that they may have, or the affordances that they may have or not have. But being culturally responsive means so much more than that. Being culturally responsive is being thinking about the PE programs, the PE teachers in this local school communities across New York State, and the fact that there are many different local school communities and many different PE programs with many different resources or lacking resources. And that's something that became increasingly apparent in this process. Another piece to being culturally responsive is making sure that we put together a team, a task force, if you will, that can represent the diverse and dynamic PE programs from across the state, from New York City and Long Island, all the way through Albany and up to the North Country, and then certainly moving upstate through Central New York and Central Western and Western New York and all parts in between. If we're going to put together standards that are achievable and attainable for all PE programs, all children from our communities in New York State, it became increasingly apparent that we needed to put together a dynamic task force that can be representative of and be a voice for all of these different programs. So if by clicking on this link, I'm going to hit stop share for a second, and I'm going to hit share again and show you the wonderful committee that we put together of professionals. Can everybody see my screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. You should be able to see from New York State Ed's website the list of over 30 professionals representing the diverse and dynamic PE programs from across the state, and many of our professionals on this distinguished committee, a part of New York State AHPERD, so kudos and props to our professional association, and some here, certainly here today, and kudos and props to many of you on that. I noticed Dr. Michael Norris is here, and Dr. Matt Madden, and who else is here? I noticed Dr. Michael Gossett as well. So, and others that I'm sure, well, Colleen Corsi, who's not here, but nevertheless, you see what I mean. Many people, and people that were certainly instrumental to this process. So I'm going to hit stop share and come back to the slide. Just hang tight. Okay. So again, so it was very important to have to be representative, to again align and certainly preserve the integrity of being culturally responsive, and that also included you know, the inclusion of administrators and district coordinators and also other stakeholders like New York State AHPERD and BOCES as well. That was very important. We even had a pediatrician, a local pediatrician downstate, as part of the committee to, again, to provide a unique vantage point to help us in this process. Another part of being culturally responsive, and you heard me talk about it earlier, is soliciting the feedback of our constituencies. And so that's what we set out to do. And in the fall, again, I mentioned the goal was to have a draft of these standards available in the summer of 2019 with public consumption and a poll of public constituents and their opinions regarding the standards available in the fall of 2019. And that's what we were able to do, certainly. And we provided a 6 to 8 week period starting at this time last year, September 2019. And you can see that we received nearly 520 responses, ranging from many, many different people, very helpful comments. Overall, 94% or higher supporting the new direction of the standards themselves. So certainly proud of that achievement. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see some of the qualitative comments, just again, a snapshot, a perfect progressions to think about critical thinking and healthy decision-making down the road. Love the addition of the term overall wellness, speaking to Anchor Standard 5, and then the key ingredients to allow and children to pursue and ascend through high school PE programs. So something certainly we're very proud of, and another important aspect of being culturally responsive. So that's the background. And again, you've heard me refer to the idea that we always have to think about where we've come from and where we're headed. And that certainly applies in this situation. Are there any questions thus far? And I would certainly rely on Colby and Rochelle and Dr. Manson to help me with the chat, or feel free to press your space bar and unmute and ask away. Any questions for you thus far? Anything coming from the chat, Dr. Manson or Colby, Rochelle?
No, no questions in the chat, Clancy.
Okay, no problem. So I'm not going to let you off that easy. I have some questions for you. So I've just posted a little survey poll, if you will, in the chat. Hopefully you have access to it. And let me know, or Dr. Manson, Colby, Rochelle, if you're having problems accessing. And let's fire away.
Should be good. I was able to get onto it.
Pardon me?
So you should be good. I was able to get onto it. So
okay, great, great. So far, 2 responses. Excellent, excellent. 91 attendees. So Dr. Manson and Dr. Madden, Dr. Gossett, others alike, Sandy Morley, other researchers and scholars would certainly attest that we need higher numbers and response rates. So we're only at 4. Let's get some more responses, please.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure, Claire. Was that Claire? There's a survey that I attached in the chat. If you could click on the survey and fire away. Oh, our numbers have boosted up to 24. We're getting there. We're at 24. That's excellent. We're almost just under 20, 30%. Again, as researchers and scholars in the room, we would certainly want even higher. Let's keep firing away. That'd be great. Oh, great. We're nearing 50%. That's fantastic. We're getting better. And some of the professionals in the room, you know, some of these questions, do your best. They really, I certainly catered these questions to future professionals. $55. Okay, a couple more seconds. Let's see how many we have attending. 91. So we're almost near 60%. A little higher would be great. Certainly some, I mentioned our visionaries. We certainly can't forget Dr. Kowalski is here today as well. And also Dr. Feingold. I'm not sure if he's joined us today. And Dr. Elisa James. Very important, again, to remember our visionaries. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. We're at 65 responses. That's pretty good, near almost 70%. Again, any researcher would be certainly proud. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen here. Okay, so when did you decide to become a physical educator? We have over 50% as a major change. Okay, interesting. We have a small fraction that are unsure. We have, you know, almost 20% that have had long aspirations. That's great. And then even earlier. That's great. That's great. Okay. And then we have what grade level you potentially would like to teach. Well, a lot of different ranges here. That's fantastic. A wide range. 32% elementary and secondary. That's great. Okay. So not really, either preference is fine. That's great. So, nearly 30% high school. That's fantastic. High school is certainly one area that we can improve in physical education across this country. 20% middle school. That's fantastic. 13% elementary, the little ones for sure. And then some people in higher ed and being administration as well. That's great. And then as a future professional, we have, wow, nearly 50% that have experience with both. Well, that says a lot about our PEEP programs in the room, doesn't it? I wouldn't expect anything less for sure. And then we have a small fraction that don't have a lot of experience. And then we have some with individual experience with each. And then joining our professional association, certainly very important. That's 70 responses now. That's with 90 in attendance. That's fantastic. Let's see, we have 40% with both New York State and Shape America. That's fantastic. Thank you for your loyalty. Over 25% New York State AHPERD. That's fantastic. And Shape America 8%. That's great. That's great. A small, 25%. There, well, and hopefully something like this can convince you tonight about the importance of joining. So thank you for your patience and answering my questions. I certainly appreciate that. And let's move on and go back to the slide. I'm sure you're dying to see the standards themselves. Okay, so let's go to share screen again. And let's get to the meat and potatoes. Okay, great. So I mentioned about being representative. And again, there's many people here that were certainly involved in this voyage with me and in this process, and grateful for their hard work. And anybody who wants to jump in certainly can help. But when we put together, or when we were charged with this task of trying to revise, we had several options to think about. Do we want to revise the New York State standards? Do we want to potentially rewrite and scrap them? Do we want to adopt the national standards? And you can see there was a lot of decisions to make. And overall, as a committee and task force, we decided that the best approach would be to adopt the national standards with some slight revisions where appropriate, and a +1. So we went to we decided on a 5+1 option, and the adoption of the 5 national standards with some slight revisions where appropriate, and the +1 to preserve the integrity of New York State Standard 3, 1996. So who in the room can look back or think about New York State Standard 3? What is New York State Standard 3 from 1996? Someone shout it out or write it in the chat.
About the career, what's available out in the community.
That's correct. Personal and community resources. Thank you, Joanne. You ran a free round of golf with Miss Morley coming up. Congratulations. Fantastic. Well done. So that is exactly right. Consumerism. Okay. Now, another question for everybody in the room. What's New York State Standard 3, 1996, old Standard 3? What discipline do you think this standard was originally intended for? Who else? Anyone? Anyone want to take a stab?
We have some people in the chat writing. We have family and consumer sciences, recreation.
Who was the first one you read?
Dr. Michael Norris.
Dr. Michael Norris, well done. Exactly. Family and consumer sciences. You win a free writing tutorial from Dr. Michael Gossett. Well done. Okay. So now you understand. But the great thing about this is that New York State Standard 3 was originally envisioned for family and consumer sciences, not physical education. We could make an argument for certainly for health education. But over the last 22 years or 24 years in the making, physical educators in New York State have adopted and made that standard their own, so much so that fast forward 2018 through now, this committee was prompted and urged and encouraged to continue or make sure that we have a standard that still addresses those themes. So kudos and props to all the PE programs and PE practitioners across the state for really taking something and making it your own. I found that certainly very fascinating as well. So these are what are our anchor standards. We call, and again, a 5+1 and standard 6 really preserves the integrity of the old New York State Standard 3. Standard 1 mirrors National Standard 1. Standard 2, and as a psychomotor flavor. Standard 2, again, mirrors National Standard 2 and certainly satisfies and aligns nicely with psychomotor and cognitive traits. Same thing we could say for Standard 3 with the health-related fitness component. And then Standards 4 and 5, no question, effective domain, and again, mirror the language of National Standards 4 and 5. However, Standard 5 itself has the addition of the term overall wellness to connect back to some of those important initiatives that have really emerged in education over the last several years with social emotional learning and mental health. And those are our anchor standards. Certainly exciting. So when we're thinking about our anchor standards and again, thinking about this initiative, we decided that we also wanted to think about adopting the framework from our national association. And what I mean by the framework is the anchor standard followed by the content strands. So the anchor standard followed by the content strands, followed by the K through 12 grade level outcomes. We thought that that was a valuable piece to help organize, to help center or focus phys ed practitioners. And so that's what we also did, is we adopted that framework or that structure, if you will, when setting up our anchor standard. So we have our anchor standard, plus we further define or categorize the anchor standard into what we call content strands. And then within each content strand, we come up with K through 12 GLOs for each content strand, again, to help center or focus the physical education practitioner. One thing that I did forget to mention too is that this project, this initiative is only physical education right now. So these learning standards, these new standards I present to you today are now solely for physical education. The health education side and family consumers side will still revert to 1996 standards with obviously future prospects to revise those moving forward. So that's the structure and framework. And you can see here that Anchor 4 is broken into 3 content strands and then accompanying GLOs. Here's another example that gives you a little bit more information. Standard 4, the Anchor standard says that students exhibit a responsible personal and social behavior that respects self and others. Content strand 2 is entitled Social Awareness and Relationship Skills. And then the GLO for the 7th grade indicates students demonstrate civility by cooperating with classmates in physical activity settings. Standard 6, again, paying tribute to our old New York State Standard 3, recognizes career opportunities and personal community resources again. Strand 1 is entitled, go figure, personal and community resources. And then outcome or level 1 explains how personal community resources or personal community physical activity and fitness resources can overall wellness. So one thing to keep in mind is that our K through 12 GLOs are K through 8 really, and then we go level 1, which refers to grades 9 and 10, and level 2, which refers to grades 11 and 12. So from a coding standpoint or an abbreviation standpoint, the committee was certainly certainly wanted to facilitate and help come up with a streamlined process for coding, and that's what we've been able to do. And in this example, you see ny.s6.1.k. So what does that mean? Well, NY, I think we know, refers to New York State standards. S6 refers to Anchor Standard 6. .1 refers to Content Strand 1. And .k refers to kindergarten. So if we were if we were targeting the exact same anchor standard and content strand, but we were targeting 8th grade, how would this code end? How would this code end? Dot what? Anyone in the chat?
In their chat, they're saying 8. A lot of
8th
them.
grade.
Eights are coming up all over.
Whoever got that first Dr. Manson wins. What can we go with? A free walk along the beach with Dr. Kowalski. That sounds.
And that would go to Eric Gonzalez.
Okay, that's fantastic. Excellent. Okay, so you get it. Now, here's a question for you. 1 through 6. 1 through, oh, I gave away the answer. What's the, what's the top or the bottom number or the top number with this one here, referencing, excuse me, this one here referencing, oops, the anchor standard. What's the top number, what's the bottom number? And I gave it away, so now I have to, I guess, take myself out for coffee, but it's S1 through S6, right? So that, we know that S1 through 6, we know we'll never see an S7, we'll never see an S8. And then we're going to talk about these content strands in a second, and we're going to learn quickly how many options we'll see for content strands moving forward. So that's the coding. So some more information for you. The committee felt it was important to take a less is more approach. So I used the national standard framework as an example, and Shape America put together a wonderful document and structure that certainly helped us immensely with this initiative. And if you take a look again at that structure that we talk about, the anchor standard followed by the content strands followed by the GLOs, this really does emulate or mirror what Shape America has done. But we felt as a committee that a less is more approach would be the way to go. So what do we mean by that? Well, Shape America has 5 national standards, and then each of the national standards are broken into content strands by level, elementary, middle, and secondary. So take a look. National Standard 1 at the elementary level is broken into 27 content strands, okay? If you look in comparison to ours, we broke into 4 total. At the elementary level, 5 content strands. At the national level, 2 for us. 6 content strands at the elementary level, 2 for us. 6 content strands at standard 4, 3 for us. And then 4 for standard 5, and then 3 for us. And then the +1 standard 6 breaks into 2 content strands. So what does that mean? Well, if you look at this, elementary, middle, and high school at the national level breaks into over 146 content strands alone. That means well over 200 plus grade level outcomes. That is fantastic, very specific, very helpful. But the committee felt that PE programs being so unique and different and disparate in New York State, we needed to take a less is more approach. And so we went with the idea of no more than 4 content strands per standard. So back to that question, what's the maximum number here and what's the minimum number here? 1 through 4, that's the answer. So we felt a less is more approach. And if you take a look at that, that means 16 content strands altogether, which translate between 70 to 80 plus GLOs, which we thought was more manageable and more reasonable for PE practitioners. Now, as a result, we had to develop these standards with GLOs and content strands much more broadly. But we believe that the broad tenets of the standards and the accompanying GLOs and content strands allow for PE programs the flexibility and versatility to align accordingly. Some other things to keep in mind, obviously we were very intentional with our verbs, thinking about Bloom's taxonomy. And another important piece to me, and again, some of our higher ed and professional practitioners in the room, you know, if this was asked of us 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it would have been simply measurable. State Ed would have asked us to make sure that everything was measurable. Well, that was never the directive, and certainly, again, some of my research interests in educational policy and PE, we were never given that directive. We were, in fact, asked or encouraged to think about developing GLOs that were either observable, demonstrable, or measurable. So we've come a long way, and that certainly takes away some of the accountability issues that we've seen in public education over the last couple of years. Okay. The last, well, certainly not the last, but another major important.
What are you talking about?
That was really prevalent in this process was this code versus curriculum analogy. These standards, and in the past, many disciplines have been guilty of it as well, but these standards have to be thought of as curriculum. This is, to use the building analogy, this is the code. What the building looks like here near Buffalo, New York, where I live, what the building looks like and how it's developed may be completely different. They need to be in New York City or Long Island, and that's okay. The most important piece is that the foundation and house is built and designed to align to the code, and the code needs to serve or the standards serve as that code. All of our local school communities are unique and vast, many resources, and in some cases not as many. So it's very important that practitioners are given the autonomy to develop and continue with their curriculums that they know best and make sure that that curriculum aligns to the code. So I want you to start thinking about the standards as the code, if you will, in this analogy. Some other key features of the initiative itself, we include certainly grade level introductions to help focus again and center the PE practitioner with expectations. And hot off the press over the last month, as we've just released a glossary of terms to help, again, in many cases, our practitioners in New York State are very well versed and know this well, but in case there's any incongruency with terminology, it was important that we felt to operationally define terms so that everybody was on the same page. And that glossary is now updated in the working edition that you've downloaded for tonight. In terms of implementation, we're really ahead of the game because we were able to get this approval in early March, and from March until now, we've been in this soft rollout, if you will, where we're just raising awareness, and we're continuing in that this upcoming year, where we're doing sessions like this and trying to get the message out and starting to prepare school districts and practitioners and organizations accordingly. And that's what we're doing for the first year, is this raise awareness side of things. And then next year will be the building capacity year, where we really think about deliberate and targeted professional development. And that'll take place for a year. And then the final 2 years will be an implementation cycle where we expect school districts to transition to full implementation of the standards. So in many cases, you have a 3 to 4 year transition to convert to the new standards. So I think a reasonable expectation in that. So I've given you the opportunity to download the at a glance. This is the vertical and horizontal articulated standards document, and this is the actual document itself. So what I want you to do now is I'm going to stop share, and I want you to make sure that you've downloaded these documents, and I'm giving you a task to do. So the first thing I want you to do is I'm pasting the documents again one more time in the chat. Hopefully you've seen that. And then I'm going to paste the at a glance document for you as well. Here we go. And what I want you to do is take a couple seconds to take a look. This at a glance document certainly makes it a little easier, but I wouldn't hesitate to look at the other document as well. I'm going to show you. So hopefully you can see my screen. You see the results of our survey. Right here is the full document. And if you scroll through it, the table of contents is hyperlinked. So if you want to click on kindergarten, you can click and get to that. And then I always go back to the table of contents to help toggle through the document. If you wanted to take a look at high school, you can do that. So that makes it easier to navigate or say the glossary. So take a couple seconds right now and thumb through the document. You can also take a look at the vertical and horizontal articulated scope and sequence, if you will. And you can see our anchor standard here with our content strands. So standard 1 with 4 content strands and then accompanying GLOs, and this continues through standard 6. So take a look at that, and I'll give you a couple seconds to navigate, and then we'll move to our next activity. Dr. Manson and Colby and Rochelle can let me know if there's any questions that are glaring, or if anybody wants to ask a question as we continue, that's fine too.
There's nothing right now, Clancy.
Okay, I guess that's good. Do you have some? Thanks, Dr. Norris. I do have a beverage. I guess I should take a little sip right now. Appreciate that.
We had someone ask if you could repost the second link.
Sure, surely.
Yeah, they're saying link 1 and 2 are the same link posted as in the beginning.
Yeah, there you go. Post it again. Oops, that was to Michael. Sorry. There we go. That should be to everybody. Take a look at that. Surely you can't be serious.
Don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, don't call me Shirley. That's an inside joke from Dr. Madden. If we can't laugh at ourselves, then who can we laugh at, right? The wonderful Leslie Nielsen, Canadian, fellow Canadian like yourself, like myself. Nielsen, Leslie Nielsen, excuse me. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. How about some questions or anything that you want to, any clarity you need? Anything?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, no problem. So here's what I want you to do now. You've had a chance to kind of look at things. Can everybody see this slide here? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is turn to page 12 of the document. So that would not necessarily be the, again, the vertical and horizontal articulated at a glance document. The actual document itself, it's entitled Physical Education Lifelong Practices. Take a look at page 12, and it'll take you about a minute to read. Take a look at page 12 and tell me lifelong practices resonate with you. I think this is a helpful addition to, again, help center PE and its relationship to the physical literacy construct.
You drove to Chicago to get a test? No.
So, is there any, what do you think? Is there, what particular lifelong practices as future professionals, or even again, our experts, visionaries in the room, what particular lifelong practices resonate with you? Anyone? You can hit spacebar and shout it out, or someone can type it in the chat.
We have one in the chat right now from Ryan. The first and last one resonates with me, demonstrates perseverance and resilience, and connects the physical well-being to social emotional wellness.
Well said. Exactly. How can we argue? We've talked about certainly the social emotional side of things and mental health initiative, and then that perseverance piece, right? And if anything, we've learned over the last several months is the tenuous times that we're in with the pandemic and other issues. We certainly can see the connection that physical education and the important learning that physical education can provide when it comes to these lessons on the greater scale. Awesome.
I would like to share also. I think the advocates for self and others is very important also, because we have to be able to advocate for those who don't have the skills maybe to, or the access to advocate for themselves.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. Advocates for self and others. And that means so much, right? In physical education, when we think about our essential subjects and encore subjects like PE, health, and music and art, we also have to face that reality as well. Thank you, Rochelle. You win a free Zoom chat with Mr. Ron Fisk, who's here with us tonight. So that's fantastic. Okay, so.
Dr. Seymour, we have a couple of more in the,
okay.
if you want to address them.
Sure.
We have one from Jay. The second one resonates with me to advocate for my students in class, especially in adapted physical education, that they may not be able to speak up for themselves.
A voice for the voiceless. Yeah, well said. I couldn't agree more. Well said.
And then
I would love to share one too.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Let me just finish the chat room and then then you can. Stefan adapts to multiple environments and acquires skills necessary to live a healthy life. And then Gia says, advocating for others resonates with me because it is a huge part of life today. With recent events and sharing your thoughts to help others is really important. And and Anthony demonstrates perseverance and resilience and adapts to multiple environments.
Very powerful. I couldn't agree more. Well said.
And somebody was saying, so whoever was talking.
I think it's Samil. Is it Samil?
Yes, Samil Gomez. Yes.
Thanks, Samil. Go ahead.
One that stood out for me, that resonates with me, will be the fifth one: acquire skills necessary to live a healthy life. Just for the simple reason that even at my mid-20s, I didn't know what it takes to live a healthy life, being that I was always surrounded by fast food restaurants in every corner, and just eating right and things of that nature. And those are skills that you learn throughout.
Absolutely, Samil. Well said. And when you speak to that particular practice, the one thing that certainly triggers with me is that idea that we want to think about Maslow before Bloom, right? How sometimes we have to just make sure that we provide a safe learning environment for our children. We start thinking about other certainly important, but other things in PE and not only PE, across the school culture. Some of the thank you for sharing. Fantastic stuff. Very powerful. Some of the practices that resonate with me, you can see, are very similar. Exhibit civility when confronted with adversity. Certainly, we need to teach children about how to play in the sandbox in a low risk, safe, and what we mean by safe is certainly not only physically safe but emotionally safe way. Many of you have indicated the importance of embracing individual and cultural differences, celebrating our uniqueness. That's what makes us all very special, and what we all bring to the table allows us all to be successful in our own ways. And then someone mentioned multiple environments, and that certainly resonates with me well. And I think about that physical literacy construct and the idea of being able to teach children and inspire children in their individual journey to physical literacy. And sometimes that might not be on the basketball court or on the football field. That may be on the dance floor, or that may be in martial arts, or that may be in water. Or in my case, I was born with a stick in my hand and skates on my feet. I know how not to necessarily swim in the water, but I know how to skate on the ice. And so for me, that really resonates well with me. So hope you enjoy that. So another interactive task for all of you.
Clancy, you have
so
more.
what I want, another question?
No, I'm just saying there's a couple of more if you want to just look at them quick at the bottom of the chat.
Sure.
Do you see them or you want me to read them?
Oh, okay, the chat. Let's see. Using motivational strategies is so important because confidence is such a factor. Yeah, that goes back to physical literacy, Giuseppe, exactly right. If we've done a nice job in elementary PE for a long, long time, but the one breakdown is that confidence piece. And I think Giuseppe really gets to that. Motor competence is important, but we need to instill the confidence that goes with that. Really critical in all this. Stefan, is it Stefan? Very important for students to be able to understand how to be healthy, especially, yeah, absolutely, a healthy lifestyle. Not only with the current pandemic, but this is not the first time that we're going to see public health issues moving forward, for sure. Perseverance by Anthony, thank you, yes.
Okay, you got them.
Talking about advocacy, that's fantastic. Well done. I love the interaction. Oh, and Mr. Fisk has got a question. Hopefully it's not about the upcoming personal Zoom with Miss Rochelle. Go ahead.
Yeah, I politely put my hand up. Hi, everybody. I just, from my purview here and looking at these and what resonates with me, I also think the motivational strategies and the perseverance really go hand in hand. And, physical education being such a unique content area, there is one thing that we share with our colleagues in other areas is that we really need to develop learners. We're not about teaching students the answers, but teaching our students how to seek and answer the right questions and ask the right questions. And I think that really speaks to the perseverance and grit, as we often talk about as well. And so that perseverance piece and that motivational strategies piece and building on successes and failing forward, when that happens, I think is so important in our area.
Well said, Ryan. And I really liked what he talked about, questioning and thinking about that critical side of physical education, that critical pedagogy side and inquiry. Yeah, I hate to borrow from other people, and you'll know what I mean when I say it, but can't we reimagine physical education to inspire that critical side? Physical education can be so much more, no question. Okay, so on to the next slide. Thank you. I have a couple more interactive tasks with you. Again, just diving in and making sure you can navigate the document well. In these questions coming up, I would recommend that you use the vertical and horizontal articulated at a glance document. This should help you immensely. The first question, paying tribute to my Canadian heritage, Dr. Madden, teaching a 7th grade rugby unit and targeting standard 2, and the following GLO applies maturing forms of strategies, tactics, and communication independently in small-sided gameplay and other physical activities, ny.s2.2.7. What is the content strand title? So you need to go to your scope and sequence document and you need to find ny.s2. That's anchor standard 2. Dot 2 refers to the strand. That's the one you're looking for. And obviously the 7th grade level. So you got to find what is the content strand title. Who can get that?
Is that strategies and tactics?
Sean, congratulations. You win a shopping spree with Dr. Madden. That is fantastic. Well done. Exactly right. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So here is question 2. What is the GLO for NY?
Dr. Seymour?
Pardon me?
Well, I'm sorry, Dr. Seymour. I think it's a shopping spree for Sean and Christian because I think it was in the chat.
Oh, okay. Good catch. I'm glad you're so open-minded. That's fantastic.
All right. Thanks.
Congratulations, Christian. You're in great hands with Dr. Madden. Okay. So next question. What is the GLO for ny.s6.1.l1? So now you're looking for this GLO term language right here that you see in the first question. What is the GLO? So you got a S6. What does that tell you? What does L1 tell you? Anyone want to take a guess, or anyone find it? What is the GLO for ny.s6.1.L1?
You have somebody saying 9 and 10.
Okay. What does the GLO say? Can someone shout it out? You don't have to write it.
Explains how personal and community physical activity and fitness resources can support overall wellness, from Sean.
You got it. Well done. I love it. Excellent. Okay. Last question. The abbreviation for the 5th grade GLO from Anchor Standard 3's fitness planning strand is. So let's take a look at this question. NY dot S3 dot blank dot 5. You're looking for that middle number, that code. What's that code? These codes that you see here.
Anthony says explains the relationship between skill and health-related fitness.
Okay, but again, in this question, we're looking for the code, right? So what's the code for Standard 3's fitness planning strand? So we're looking for ny.s3.blank.5. What's that?
1.5.
We have Anthony again saying ny.s3.1.5.
You got it. Well done. A free emoji text from Dr. Manson. Well done. Excellent. 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 You got it.
From Anthony.
If you can answer these questions, then you already are there. You're already being able to navigate and utilize this document. Congratulations. Well done. Okay. So you heard me talk about earlier in the presentation about our New York State CNA document. We are in current revision of our CNA document for the 2nd edition. And that should be available and ready by the end of the calendar year. So we're very excited. And the nice thing about this document is we provide curricular and assessment supplements and recommendations that align to the new New York State physical education learning standards and the national standards. So it'll be helpful for all of you in that regard, and PE practitioners in the trenches. So how are we doing for time, Dr. Manson?
It's 8:04. You have a few minutes, and then we can open it up to questions or conversations with people.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of transition and help reiterate what Colby discussed about joining our professional associations. Anybody have some questions about the standards themselves or comments to share? Thank you for all of the wonderful people and their good humor and dealing with many of the prizes that you have to fulfill. Make sure you call them and take them up on those prizes.
Hang on one second, Clancy. Mike Gossett had. Mike, can you just unmute and ask your question, because I don't see it. It probably went up quick.
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Now, Clancy, I sent you a question a little while ago. It's a question for the practitioners and higher ed folks. What strategies would you suggest new PE teachers take in approaching veteran PE teachers they'll be working with regarding the new standards?
So, okay, let me see if I understand your question. You're asking for future professionals in their induction years that are working with veteran.
So our current seniors, when they graduate and go in and they have new standards, and the veteran PE teachers, the interaction.
That's a great question. I think, well, a couple things. I think most school districts are moving or transitioning and know about these new standards, hopefully, and will be expected to transition and comply with PE plans for Mr. Darrell Daly. So instead of going in and, again, it's a balancing act. I think perhaps if you go as a future professional or a new PE teacher, if you go in with the attitude of trying to be helpful instead of trying to change the world, maybe that would be the way to approach it. Asking your colleague teachers and mentor teachers, if you will, their knowledge of the new standards, and then maybe steering them in the direction of some of these workshops and helping them learn about the new standards from an awareness standpoint, like what many are doing right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Before we start, everybody, I put a message in the chat room, so if all of you can please put your name and your school and your email address in there, we would greatly appreciate it. And go ahead, Clancy, you're still on. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to hit stop share for a second. I'm going to move on to my next slide. Let's see here. I'm going to share screen. And here we go. And now I'll need a little bit more help from Dr. Manson and Rochelle and Kobe if he's still around, because I don't have the gallery view because I've optimized sound and video. So let's give maybe a couple thumbs up if you still see my presentation here. And then I'm going to move on to the next slide.
It looks good. We can see it.
All right, great. So I'd like you to take a look at this video if you haven't already, and we're now going to transition to discussing about some of the opportunities with New York State AHPERD and the importance of joining our professional association. Greetings, my name is Dr. Clancy Seymour, and I'm extremely proud to be the 84th president of New York State AHPERD. The theme for my presidential year is, a professional legacy is a journey. What path will you travel? A professional legacy is unique with each person's path and individual journey. As educators, it is our responsibility to empower all K-12 students in their pursuit of health and physical literacy. Essential health and physical education programs are the paths that lead to a lifetime of wellness, enjoyment, challenge, and self-expression.
Unified Physical Education is a unique opportunity for students of varying ability levels to learn together on equal terms through ongoing fitness, sports, leadership, and wellness activities.
My brother Ben and I have grown closer through our shared experiences in Unified PE. I have an even better appreciation for the things that motivate and interest Ben.
Health and physical education programs are essential, providing knowledge-based experiences through which
Oh, sorry.
PE. I have an even better appreciation for the things that motivate and interest Ben.
Health and physical education programs are essential, providing knowledge-based experiences through which responsibility, decision-making, and confidence are continuously nurtured. These programs are taught with a broader curricular focus that contribute to individuals becoming a fully functioning, productive, and concerned citizens.
My health education experience provided me with information that I should know, along with skills that help me navigate the ever-changing world around me through my teenage years and well into adulthood.
Health education will have a positive, lasting impact on my family, my friends, my community, and most of all, myself.
Health and physical education teaches our students how to gain strength in fundamental skills as well as social emotional learning skills.
Students learn to label, understand, and manage emotions through the zones of regulation. Students learn to problem solve, listen attentively, communicate effectively, and resolve conflict through the peace path.
Physical education teachers utilize the New York State Physical Education Learning Standards to inform instruction and provide K-12 students with the knowledge, skills, and confidence to pursue a lifetime of physical activities. The standards ground physical education programs in fundamental movement skills while stressing mindfulness, safety, and wellness.
Quality health and physical education programs embrace the uniqueness of all individuals, experiences, cultural heritage, traditions, skills, abilities, values, and preferences. New York State Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance believes that when differences are respected and shared commonalities are acknowledged,
all individuals can learn in meaningful ways.
My name is Colleen Corsi, and I have the privilege of being the Executive Director of the New York State Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Recognizing there is strength in numbers, it is vital we come together with a powerful voice to stress the value of quality health and physical education programs. We must communicate the message that participation in these essential programs helps to increase the overall physical, social, and emotional health of students, thus their capacity to achieve at higher levels academically. When you become a member of your professional association, New York State AHPERD, you join an elite group of professionals committed to their own professional excellence and the continuation of our disciplines as part of every child's education.
So what are your thoughts? Anyone? You can unmute or.
I really like the video. I do.
Thanks, Dr. Kowalski. Appreciate that. The next slide really talks about kind of the important challenges that lie ahead for the profession. And does anybody know how many members of New York State AHPERD there are? Anyone? Unsure? How about how many health and physical education teachers are there in New York State? Anybody want to take a guess? Pop it in the chat.
Ryan says 3,500.
35.
Ashley says 5,000.
5,000 members of New York State AHPERD?
Yep.
Okay. Ryan, I think the same thing. Yeah, we're about 4,000 members of New York State AHPERD. So what's the million-dollar question is how many HPE teachers are there in New York State approximately? Anybody want to take a guess? About
15,000.
How many? Who said that?
15,000.
Okay, yeah, someone's awesome. That's right, about 14,000. Excuse me. 14,000 HPE teachers in New York State, 4,000 of which are members of this wonderful organization in New York State AHPERD. That's about 27%. Okay, national level. How many HPE teachers are in the U.S.? Anybody know?
$15,000 times 52.
Eric said 118,000.
118,000. Okay, but not bad. The answer is 178,000, give or take a few. Okay, how many are members of Shape America of that of those 178,000?
$100,000, somebody said.
100,000?
40,000, all of them. 92,000, 10%.
Less than that, 5%, or trending towards 5%, about 9,000 and going downwards. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, even though we've certainly learned over the last several months about the importance of HPE amid a public health pandemic, we're seeing tough decisions that have to be made. And oftentimes professionals think, what can I get for joining New York State AHPERD? And I challenge all of you to turn that upside down. Instead of thinking about what I can get, what can I give to the profession that gives so much to all of you? When school districts make these cuts or make these tough decisions about PE and health and other subjects alike, unions, and oftentimes that's cited by PE practitioners in the trenches, the veterans that Dr. Gossett references. Oh, my union will take care of that. No, they will not. A union is about employee rights. It's not about disciplinary subjects represented at the K through 12 level in local school districts. New York State AHPERD comes to bat when those tough decisions are being made. Okay? New York State AHPERD was a part of these standards and these reorganization of standards, and instrumental. And it's important to remember that being a professional, and being a PE practitioner, a health educator, it is your duty to also join and represent the profession. So instead of having 4,000 fantastic HPE professionals at the table when school districts look to make these decisions, we have 14,000. Okay? So that's what I want you to think about. It's part of your duty to join the professional association and serve the association, much like the association serves all of us. I leave you with the idea of thinking about your legacy, thinking about, I know it's early because many of you are in your induction years, future professionals, but you want to, again, give back to the profession that's given you so much. And you want to think about leaving the profession in a better spot than it was when you entered. And thanks to the many visionaries in the room, Miss Morley, Dr. Gossett, okay, Rick Amundsen, Dr. Feingold, Dr. James, Dr. Norris, etc., Dr. Madden. They've taken it and put it in a better spot. And that's the challenge for all of you, is to do the same thing. That's your legacy. That's part of your legacy. My last thing that I'm sure you wanted to know is dress pants or shorts or track pants, and you can see the answer to that question. Thank you for having me tonight. Thanks, Dr. Manson, Kobe, and Rochelle for inviting me. It was a tremendous honor to be here for the Ken Demas Leadership Academy. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and now I'm open to questions.
Questions, anybody? Feel free to unmute and talk if you'd like to.
Thanks, Ryan. Membership, please encourage your colleagues, your classmates to join. It's very important. We need you more than ever.
If you haven't put your name and email and school up in the chat, please do so before you leave.
Any questions at all?
Is this whole document available from New York State AHPERD in a book?
The standards themselves are, my apologies, Miss Paula Summit, another visionary is here today. Thank you, Miss Summit. Paula Summit is here. Again, we taking the profession to a better spot than it was. Thank you, Miss Summit. Joanne, the links that I gave you allow you to download a digital version of the document and certainly print that. Yep.
Okay.
So Dr. Seymour, we have a question here in the group chat. It says, is it still a good idea to join if you are not sure if you want to teach in New York?
Great question. You know, I would encourage you to join until that decision is made. But understandably, if you move to another state, I hold no bias. Join their professional association. Be a part of your professional association. The association supports you, and you need to support the association. Please do. Dr. Pratt is here. Hi, Dr. Pratt. How are you? Another visionary. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Like Dr. Manson said, you can unmute or put in the chat here.
Anything you want. I like mint chip ice cream, if you want to know.
I just want to add, just so everybody, I don't want to get the date wrong. Just give me 1 second. I know we had two of our presentations within, 2 weeks. They were pretty close together. And they'll now be going to once a month. So just so if you want to put the next one on your calendar, it is Monday, November 16th, same time, 7 o'clock. And Dr. Elisa James from the College of Rockport, and also a New York State AHPERD past president, will be, as Clancy said before, they're redoing or doing a second phase, but she will be introducing to the updated curriculum and assessment guidance document. So if you're not familiar with it, spread the word. She's going to be great, and we'll be doing the same kind of thing then. I don't have the other dates in front of me, but you do get them in newsletters. We have Miss Sandy Morley, who is going to be presenting. We have Kermit Moyer, who will be presenting, and we have Melissa Pierce, who will also be presenting. So some of you know their names, and they'll be going through December, January, and February, ending in February because March is when we will hopefully have our next conference.
Fantastic.
All right, other than that, I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, if you are not a member, I highly stress it, and I'm sure that throughout the workshop here that you've got that message before, but definitely become a member. Other than that, we're going to stay on for a few more. If anyone has any other questions, you're more than welcome to stay on. But again, thank you, Dr. Seymour, for joining us and doing your presentation. We really appreciate it. If anyone has questions, shoot me an email, or Dr. Manson or Rochelle. Dr. Seymour put his information up there. So again, thank you, and I hope everyone has a good night, and hope to see everyone soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Kobe.
So much.
Appreciate it.
Real quick, when the date for the next seminar, just to confirm, was it Monday, November 16th?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
7 o'clock. You're welcome.
Got it.
Good night, everybody.
Good
We'll
night.
stay on if anybody has anything
you.
else in a minute.
Sure.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Seymour. Thank you, Dr. Manson.